What if the thing that makes you feel unworthy is actually the very thing that makes you powerful? Not your strengths, not your talents, but the part of you that feels rejected, different, and misunderstood. That is the hidden story of Tony Chopper in One Piece. Because Chopper's journey isn't just about becoming a great doctor, it's about learning to see value in himself when the world taught him he had none. Chopper's story begins with isolation. Born a reindeer with a blue nose, he is immediately seen as different. And in nature, different often means rejected. He is cast out by his own herd, treated as an outsider, something strange, something that doesn't belong. But his isolation doesn't end there. After eating the human fruit, he becomes something even more confusing. A being caught between two worlds. Not fully reindeer, not fully human, and because of that, he is rejected by both. This creates one of the most painful psychological experiences a person, or in this case a character, can go through. Identity confusion. When you don't feel like you belong anywhere, you begin to question your own worth. You start asking, what am I? And when that question goes unanswered, it often turns into something more dangerous. Do I even matter? Chopper internalizes this rejection. He doesn't just experience it, he believes it. He starts to see himself as something to be feared, something to be avoided. And because of that, he hides. Not just physically, but emotionally. He builds walls, keeps his distance, and avoids connection because connection has only ever led to pain. But then, something changes. Chopper meets Dr. Hiraluk. And for the first time, someone doesn't see him as a monster. Hiraluk sees him as a person. He accepts him not in spite of his differences, but with them. And that acceptance becomes the foundation of Chopper's transformation. Because when someone is seen for who they are and accepted, it creates a shift. It challenges the negative beliefs they've built about themselves. It introduces a new possibility. Maybe I'm not worthless. Maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I've just been misunderstood. Hiraluk doesn't just give Chopper a home, he gives him meaning. He teaches him that being a doctor is not just about medicine, but about saving lives, about giving hope, about being there when it matters most. And for someone who has felt invisible, that purpose becomes everything. But transformation is never linear. When Hiraluk dies, Chopper is faced with another wave of pain, loss, guilt, confusion. And once again, he is forced to confront the question of his worth. Because when the one person who believed in you is gone, it's easy to fall back into old beliefs. To think, maybe I really am alone. Maybe I really don't belong. But this is where Chopper's growth begins to take root. Instead of shutting down completely, he holds on to what Hiraluk gave him. The idea that he can help others, that he can be useful, that he can make a difference. And this is a critical shift in his psychology. Because self-worth often begins not with how you see yourself, but with how you choose to act. When you start contributing, when you start helping, when you start showing up, you begin to build evidence that you matter. Chopper's journey continues when he meets Monkey D. Luffy. And once again, we see the power of unconditional acceptance. Luffy doesn't question what Chopper is. He doesn't analyze his differences. He doesn't judge him. He simply accepts him, fully, instantly, and invites him to join the crew. This moment is more powerful than it seems, because for someone who has spent their entire life being rejected, being accepted without conditions is life-changing. It doesn't just make you feel included, it begins to heal the parts of you that believed you never could be. But even after joining the crew, Chopper's insecurities don't disappear. And this is important. Growth does not erase insecurity. It transforms your relationship with it. Chopper still doubts himself. He still gets scared. He still questions his abilities. But now, he acts anyway. He studies harder. He trains more. He pushes himself beyond his limits, not to prove something to others, but to become someone he can respect. And over time, his confidence begins to build. Not because someone told him he was enough, but because he started to believe it through his actions. One of the most powerful symbols of Chopper's transformation is his ability to control his different forms. At first, his transformations are unstable, unpredictable, even dangerous. They reflect his internal chaos, his lack of control, his confusion about who he is. But as he grows, as he gains confidence and understanding, those transformations become controlled, intentional, aligned. And that mirrors his internal journey. Because when you don't understand yourself, your actions are chaotic. But when you begin to accept yourself, to understand your strengths and your flaws, everything becomes more focused, more deliberate, more powerful. Chopper also teaches an important lesson about kindness. Despite everything he's been through, despite the rejection, the pain, the isolation, he chooses to care. He chooses to help. He chooses to heal. And that choice is not weakness, it's strength. Because it's easy to become cold after being hurt. It's easy to close yourself off. But to remain compassionate in a world that hasn't always been kind to you, that requires resilience. His famous reaction when people compliment him, acting annoyed while secretly being happy, is more than just a comedic trait. It reflects his lingering insecurity. The part of him that still doesn't fully know how to receive validation. The part of him that is still adjusting to being seen in a positive light. And that makes him real. Because growth doesn't make you perfect, it makes you aware. By the time we see Chopper later in the series, he is no longer the scared, isolated figure he once was. He is a doctor, a fighter, a member of a family that values him. But more importantly, he is someone who has begun to see himself differently. Not as a mistake, not as an outsider, but as someone who belongs. And that is the true transformation. Chopper's story is not just about becoming stronger, it's about becoming whole. It's about taking the parts of yourself that you once rejected and learning to accept them, to understand them, to use them, because the truth is, the things that make you feel different are often the things that make you unique. And the parts of you that you struggle to accept are often the parts that hold your greatest potential. Chopper didn't become valuable because he changed who he was. He became valuable because he finally understood it.